Welcome to Paper Trail, where we make academic research accessible and engaging. Let's see what the evidence says.
It's a widely held dream, working hard for decades, then retiring early to enjoy the fruits of your labor, perhaps travel, pursue hobbies, or simply relax. But what if that dream, for some, comes with a hidden cost to the very organ that enables those pursuits?
That's precisely what a recent paper, The Mind at Work, suggests. It presents compelling evidence that for individuals in cognitively demanding professions, early retirement isn't just a lifestyle change. It can actually trigger a measurable decline in cognitive function.
So the very act of stepping away from work, which we often associate with improved well-being, could actively harm your cognitive abilities? That seems incredibly counterintuitive.
It does, but the researchers leverage a fascinating natural experiment to isolate this effect, showing that the mental engagement demanded by certain jobs acts as a protective factor for the brain, and removing that stimulation can lead to noticeable changes.
The core finding is a significant link between early retirement and cognitive decline, particularly for a specific demographic. What did the paper uncover about who is most affected by this cognitive cost?
The most pronounced effects were observed among individuals who had spent their careers in jobs requiring high cognitive engagement. Think professions that demand constant problem-solving, strategic thinking, complex decision-making, or intense memory recall. For these individuals, the sudden cessation of that mental workout appears to have a measurable impact.
So it's not simply retirement itself, but the type of work you're retiring from that seems to be the critical factor. It's almost like the brain, much like a muscle, needs regular, intense exercise to maintain its strength.
That's a good analogy. The paper strongly supports a use-it-or-lose-it hypothesis for cognitive function. When the daily demands of a cognitively rich job are removed, the brain's engagement level drops, and this, over time, can manifest as a decline in various cognitive domains.
This isn't just about feeling a little rusty, is it? The paper delves into specific aspects of cognitive decline. Which functions were most affected?
The study identified significant declines in areas like verbal fluency, memory recall, and processing speed. For example, participants who retired early from high-skilled jobs showed a noticeable reduction in their ability to generate words within a specific category or recall information, and their mental processing generally slowed down. These aren't subtle shifts, they're statistically significant changes detected through standardized cognitive tests.
And how did the researchers manage to isolate this effect? Because retirement is often correlated with age, and age alone brings its own cognitive changes. Plus, people's health status or socioeconomic situation might influence both retirement decisions and cognitive health. How did they untangle all those variables?
This is where the methodology truly shines. The researchers capitalized on a series of French pension reforms in the late 1980s and early 1990s. These reforms changed the legal retirement age for certain cohorts almost overnight, creating an exogenous shock that effectively served as a natural experiment.
So like a randomized control trial in the wild?
Precisely. It allowed them to compare individuals who were forced to retire early due to the reform with those who, just slightly older or younger, were not affected and continued working for longer. This quasi-experimental design is critical because it minimizes the impact of self-selection bias, the idea that healthier or wealthier people might choose to retire early, which could confound the results. By comparing groups whose retirement age was determined by policy rather than personal choice, they could more credibly attribute cognitive changes directly to the act of early retirement.
That's a very clever identification strategy. So they could really pinpoint the causal effect of early retirement on cognition. And what about those confounding factors you mentioned, like health status? Did they control for overall health declining after retirement, which might also affect cognition?
They did. The paper meticulously accounts for changes in physical health, depression, and social isolation post-retirement. What they found was that while early retirement did correlate with some changes in health and well-being, the observed cognitive decline was largely independent of these factors. In other words, even after controlling for potential health issues or changes in social interaction, the direct cognitive cost of disengaging from mentally stimulating work remains significant.
So it's not simply that people get sicker or sadder in retirement and that makes their cognition decline. There's an additional distinct mechanism at play here related to mental stimulation.
Exactly. The findings suggest a direct link between the loss of complex daily tasks and cognitive performance. It points to the idea that the brain benefits from the regular exercise of specific functions, and when those functions are no longer required, they can atrophy. This is particularly salient for jobs that intrinsically demand high cognitive load.
This prompts questions about the specific mechanisms. Beyond just the use it or lose it principle, what else might be happening? Is it the loss of routine, the reduction in social interaction, or something else entirely?
The paper acknowledges that the precise neural mechanisms are complex and likely multifactorial. While they controlled for social isolation and general health, the loss of a structured routine, the reduction in novel problem-solving situations, and the decrease in opportunities for learning and adaptation that a demanding job provides all likely contribute. Work often provides a ready-made environment for cognitive engagement, social interaction, and a sense of purpose. When that's removed without adequate replacement, it can create a void that impacts brain health.
So for someone who retires from a demanding job, it's not enough to simply not get sick or depressed. They need to actively seek out new forms of cognitive engagement to replace what their job once provided.
That's the implication. The research isn't suggesting that retirement itself is inherently bad, but rather that the transition from a highly stimulating environment to one with less structure and fewer cognitive demands can be detrimental if not managed thoughtfully. It underscores the importance of active engagement throughout the lifespan, especially after leaving formal employment.
This challenges much conventional thinking about retirement as a purely beneficial state of rest. It adds a layer of nuance, suggesting that for many, there's a delicate balance to strike between relaxation and continued mental activation.
Indeed, it forces a reconsideration of what a successful retirement looks like, especially for those in intellectually challenging professions. It's not just financial security or physical health, it's also about maintaining cognitive vitality.
To summarize, what are the key insights listeners should take away from this paper?
First, early retirement, particularly from cognitively demanding jobs, carries a measurable and distinct cognitive cost, affecting areas like verbal fluency and memory. Second, the use it or lose it principle seems to apply strongly to brain function, with daily work serving as a powerful cognitive stimulant for many. Third, the study's clever use of French pension reforms provides strong causal evidence, distinguishing this effect from other factors like general health or personal choice.
And finally, it suggests that maintaining cognitive engagement post-retirement isn't just a nice-to-have, but a crucial component for brain health, especially for those who previously had highly stimulating careers.
Absolutely. It reframes the retirement conversation to include the need for intentional cognitive activity.
The findings definitely prompt consideration. For those contemplating early retirement from a demanding career, what active steps might they consider to mitigate this potential cognitive cost? That wraps up this episode of Paper Trail. Join us next time as we dig into more research worth talking about. If you liked what you heard, share it with a friend.
Keep reading the fine print.